Star Trek Beyond ending, and why no sequel 8 years later explained. Star Trek Beyond's ending left the door open for the further adventures of Chris Pine's USS Enterprise crew, but it's now 8 years later, and Star Trek IV has yet to surface. Directed by Justin Lin, Star Trek Beyond, the third entry in the J.J. Abrams produced Star Trek movies, stranded the USS Enterprise crew on the planet Altamid. Discovering an abandoned Starfleet vessel from a century earlier, it's revealed that the villainous Krall, Idris Elba, and his army are the mutated crew of the USS Franklin, and Krall has been plotting his revenge against the United Federation of Planets ever since crashing on Altamid decades ago. While Captain James T. Kirk, Chris Pine, and Spock, Zachary Quinto, are considering their futures in Star Trek Beyond, there was never any indication that this was intended to be the final Kelvin timeline movie. Feeling lost from his 5-year mission, Captain Kirk applied to become Vice Admiral of the revolutionary new starbase Yorktown. Meanwhile, the death of Ambassador Spock, Leonard Nimoy, has forced the younger Spock to consider leaving Starfleet and continuing Spock Prime's diplomatic work on New Vulcan. By the end of Star Trek Beyond, Kirk and Spock realize they belong aboard the USS Enterprise together and launch a new 5-year mission. Nearly a decade later, audiences are still waiting for Star Trek IV. Krall had been tracking the USS Enterprise since it took possession of an ancient artifact that was the final component needed to complete the construction of the Abranath, a devastating ancient bioweapon. With the Abranath in his possession, Krall and his swarm set off for Starbase Yorktown to wipe out its inhabitants. Giving chase aboard the USS Franklin, Kirk and the crew first had to weaken Krall's swarm. Spock and Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy, Carl Urban, beamed aboard one of the swarm ships to throw off their formation, allowing the Franklin to destroy the ships by using sabotage, Kirk's favorite Beastie Boys song, as a discordant and disruptive noise. With the swarm destroyed, Captain Kirk discovered the truth that Krall was actually human, the embittered war veteran Captain Balthazar Edison. Krall had survived the destruction of the swarm and still intended to use the Abranath by unleashing it into Yorktown's atmospheric regulator to wipe out all life aboard the space station. Kirk and Krall fought in the central atmospheric regulator, with the Enterprise captain attempting to prevent Krall from unleashing the weapon. With help from Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott, Simon Pegg, Kirk was able to override the regulator and eject Krall and the Abranath into the vacuum of space. With the original USS Enterprise destroyed in the spectacular first act of Star Trek Beyond, Captain Kirk needed a new ship after saving Yorktown. The USS Enterprise A is teased by Commodore Paris, Shariat Ashlu, when she says that the only other ship capable of navigating the nebula near Altamid isn't near completion. With the Enterprise destroyed on Altamid, this new starship was presumably hastily renamed so that the Federation could retain its flagship. As the Enterprise crew gathered to celebrate Captain Kirk's birthday at the end of Star Trek Beyond, they looked out admiringly at their new starship, the USS Enterprise, and the construction of the new starship appeared to signal the ongoing adventures of Kirk and the crew. However, to date, the new Enterprise hasn't been put through its paces on the big screen, as Star Trek IV is perennially delayed by multiple behind-the-scenes issues. When Star Trek Beyond hit theaters in 2016, it was hailed as a solid entry into the rebooted franchise, blending action, humor, and heart in the way that Star Trek fans had come to expect. Directed by Justin Lin, Beyond was the third film in the Kelvin timeline, a parallel universe introduced in J.J. Abrams' 2009 Star Trek. While Beyond ended on a note of optimism and left the door open for more adventures of the USS Enterprise crew, 8 years later, fans are still waiting for a follow-up. Here's a closer look at the ending of Star Trek Beyond and the complex reasons why a sequel has yet to materialize. The ending of Star Trek Beyond, a new dawn for the Enterprise crew. Star Trek Beyond is set 3 years into the USS Enterprise's 5-year mission of exploration. The film focuses on Captain James T. Kirk, Chris Pine, and his crew as they face a new enemy, Krall, Idris Elba, a former Starfleet officer who has become bitter and vengeful over what he perceives as the Federation's betrayal. Krall's plan is to use an ancient bioweapon to destroy the Federation's newest space station, Yorktown, and unleash chaos across the galaxy. The climax of the film is a thrilling battle in which the Enterprise crew, alongside their new ally Jayla, Sofia Boutella, manages to stop Krall by using creative tactics and teamwork. Krall's plan is foiled, and Kirk retrieves the alien bioweapon, ultimately using it against Krall in a decisive moment that saves Yorktown. In the aftermath, the crew reflects on their journey, and Kirk, who had been grappling with self-doubt and a desire to leave Starfleet, decides to remain as captain of the Enterprise. Spock, Zachary Quinto, who had been considering leaving to continue Ambassador Spock's legacy on New Vulcan, also recommits to the crew. The final scenes show the crew preparing to embark on a new journey aboard a newly constructed USS Enterprise, a sleek and advanced version of their previous ship. There's a sense of closure, but also of new beginnings. Kirk, Spock, and the rest of the crew have found renewed purpose, and their bond is stronger than ever. The final image is of the Enterprise A soaring into the unknown, ready for more adventures. It seemed to set the stage for another sequel, but 8 years later, fans are still waiting for that next journey. Why no sequel after 8 years? Despite the success of Star Trek Beyond and its optimistic ending, a fourth film in the Kelvin timeline has remained elusive. Several factors have contributed to the prolonged delay, including creative changes, casting complications, and fluctuating interest in the franchise. 1. Financial disappointment. Though Star Trek Beyond was generally well received by critics and fans alike, it underperformed at the box office compared to its predecessors. While the 2009 Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness earned $385 million and $467 million globally, respectively, Beyond grossed a more modest $343 million on a $185 million budget. This made Paramount hesitant to greenlight a sequel right away, as the studio likely felt uncertain about the financial viability of another film, especially considering the increasing production costs associated with high-profile blockbusters. 2. Creative shifts and departure of key players. After Beyond, the Star Trek film franchise entered a period of creative uncertainty. The death of Anton Yelchin, who portrayed Chekhov, cast a somber shadow over any potential future films, as the cast and crew expressed reluctance to recast the role. Beyond that, key figures like J.J. Abrams shifted their focus to other projects, including Abrams' involvement with Star Wars: The Force Awakens, further delaying the momentum for a new Star Trek movie. In 2018, it was announced that director S.J. Clarkson had been hired to helm a fourth Star Trek film, but creative differences soon emerged, and the project was shelved. Reports suggested that Quentin Tarantino was also interested in directing a Star Trek movie, though his vision leaned more toward an R-rated, genre-blending adventure that diverged from the established tone of the Kelvin timeline. This idea never came to fruition, adding to the confusion about the franchise's future direction. 3. Complications with the cast. Another major obstacle has been the difficulty in reassembling the Kelvin timeline's cast. While the core actors, including Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, and Carl Urban, have expressed interest in returning, negotiations have been rocky. Pine, in particular, encountered contract disputes over salary demands. As one of Hollywood's more in-demand stars, Pine's paycheck had increased significantly since the first Star Trek film, and Paramount was reportedly unwilling to meet his asking price. The negotiations fell through, stalling the project once again. Additionally, the increasingly busy schedules of the cast, with actors like Zoe Saldana tied up with massive franchises like Guardians of the Galaxy and Avatar, further complicated efforts to coordinate production. 4. Changing trends in science fiction and streaming. In the years since Star Trek Beyond, the landscape of science fiction has shifted dramatically. The rise of streaming platforms has redefined how content is consumed,